Thank you, Erica. All right, thank you, Erica. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Brandy Burris. I am a student at the University of Minnesota Law School until this weekend when I graduate. And then moderating this panel with me is Samia Usman, a friend and classmate who is now a rising 3L at the University of Minnesota Law School. So today's session is a follow-up to a law review article that Simi and I wrote along with some of our classmates at the U entitled This is Minnesota. And in that article, we analyzed the disparities in Black student enrollment at our law school and also studied just the effects and kind of the problem of systemic barriers to Black representation in the law across our region. We were thrilled to have a really positive response to that article and saw that there was a lot of interest in discussing diversity in our profession. So it's our hope that with today's conversation, we'll move this discussion beyond law school students and deans and open it up to the legal community a bit more broadly. And we can kind of start having a collective conversation about how we can ensure our profession is truly representative of the diversity that we see in our state. So to frame up our conversation a little bit today, I just want to set some kind of ground rules and kind of a framework for what we're gonna focus on. So today's conversation will not debate whether there is a problem, whether there is a diversity problem. We also don't want to focus on why we should fix the problem. If you're interested in that, I think our law review article, which I hope some of you have read, is a great starting place. Rather, we'd like to get into a discussion about the how and how we can address the problem. How can we increase legal diversity in our community? Knowing that some of you may not have read our article, Simi and I selected just one quote that we thought was really powerful on the why this is important. So I'll share that and then we'll get started with the rest of the introductions and our conversation today. So to share that quote, diverse voices are necessary to interpret and inform our understanding of the laws, to ensure that all those who seek refuge, mercy, and justice receive equitable treatment. This can only be done when we allow a varied life experience to contribute to our interpretation and understanding of legal doctrine. So with that, it's my very big pleasure to introduce the deans of our local law schools, all who have accomplished amazing things over their careers before turning to academia. I'm just going to very quickly introduce them and then talk through the format, and then we will begin. So with us today, we have Dean Jenkins representing the University of Minnesota with the library behind him, in case you don't know. We also have Dean Ned Wicke from Mitchell Hamlin. He's got that beautiful artwork behind him there and his Zoom background. And then finally, the newest to the Dean Club, Dean Nickel, who's got the beautiful landscape representing St. Thomas School of Law, excuse me. So quickly, we have prepared just a few questions to get us started that Samia will talk us through. I've already showed the deans my very advanced timekeeping cards, but I will try to keep us on track so we can get through the questions that we prepared. And then towards the end, we are opening up to participant questions. So if you have questions, like Erica said, please put those in the Q&A. We'll grab them out towards the end of our agenda. So with that, thank you again for coming, and Samia, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brandy. And once again, thank you to the deans for participating in this conversation. Please let me know if you have any problem hearing me. I haven't tested my audio like a good student should. So with our first question, to give you a bit of context, we often perceive diversity in a sort of a one-dimensional race-based perspective. And for example, we look at the overall percentage of Black, Latinx, or Native students or attorneys. But in our opinion, this misses the mark. For example, myself, I'm a Black woman, I'm Muslim, I'm veiled, visibly Muslim, I'm an immigrant, I'm low income. There's a lot about me that isn't highlighted or visible. And there is a lot about me that's very visible. But with all that said, our goal is to really talk about how we can move away from discussing diversity and sort of the dangers of a single story. And how can we really reshape the idea that diversity isn't a box you tick? It it's a story you tell, it's a perspective you contribute, it's a discussion around your life experiences and your perspectives, many of which are highly differential and varied, right? For example, as you will see in our article, there's 3 personal stories, myself included, and we all talk about education and being Black and learning in the US. However, we all approached it in variously different ways, which tells you the idea that just because we are from Minnesota or learn from Minnesota does not necessarily mean that we ourselves one demographic or one understanding. So my question to all the deans, with hopefully that very nice, succinct little story, is in what ways do your efforts as law school deans avoid this danger of a single story, or work towards increasing diversity in a way that is more holistic and more representative of the world we want to live in? And Dean Netwicki, I invite you to start, if you don't mind.
Well, good. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for putting this together and organizing this panel. I also want to just thank you for sharing your stories. I think that that's what's important for us as leaders to listen to and hear, because we learn from those stories and we're able to do what we can to make sure that our places are diverse and inclusive. But when I read your stories, I think that there was one theme that kind of came through it all, and that was the importance of having a sense of belonging at the school, to feel like you could be part of that school and you're meant to be there. And so that's always kind of driven me and kind of the work that I'm trying to do here at Mitchell Hamline. To give you some examples of some of that, I think first, our admissions needs to take a holistic view. And that's something we've really worked on this year, is take a holistic view of the student and not just look at numbers as we tend to do sometimes in admissions. But we have essays, and we've actually had our students write value statements because that gives us a little bit more information about where the student is coming from. And I think that that's helped us in our admissions. I think it's just really important to create an environment where the students want to be. I mean, if I've asked students over and over, why did you go to law school? Many of them are going to say because of certain experiences they had, or they really want to go out and make a positive difference in the world. And so we have to create an environment where students feel like that they can be here to do that in a wide range of things. I'll give you a perfect example. We had an event, I guess it was a vigil after Amir Locke was killed. And we talked, we had open forum, everybody shared their feelings and so forth. But I left that meeting going, I think these students want to do something. And so we organized the very next day, working with the some legislators, to come up with a plan where our students can actually take ownership over this particular issue of no-knock warrants. And so we organized them into working groups to kind of do some work. And some of our students actually testified in front of the legislature on this particular issue. We've also tried to create environments that tackle all kinds of different issues of different types of students. And for instance, this past year, has started creating a Center for Black Life in the Law, which I think will be the first one in the country to have. It's solely focused on Black life in the law, with a kind of a look at intersectionality and really kind of that there are these great differences within the Black community and how is the law affecting that. We're also looking to, as part of our kind of social justice part of the school, we're also going to be, hopefully with ABA approval, we'll be the first school that's going to have a currently incarcerated individual, a student of our JD program beginning this coming fall. We're looking for that variance to come through hopefully this next month. But also it's really important to really focus on doing extra efforts for diversity, because our students need to see the people around them reflect their experiences in their lives. And that means faculty, that means staff, that means adjunct faculty. We have to take all those efforts that we can. And sometimes we have to do things differently in order to be able to reach those communities to bring them in. And I could tell you it makes a huge difference. We brought in this fall, we had a new faculty member who identifies as queer and is Black, and he has really just inspired students because he's had a similar type of experience that a lot of students had. And so that alone has really changed the lives of so many of our students. I had a student come up to me at Barrister's Ball in tears talking about the impact that he had on her life this year. And that's the type of things, and that's the type of environment we want to be able to create.
Dean Jenkins.
Hi, thank you, everyone. I want to first thank all of you for being on this Zoom. I want to thank the Bar Association for hosting us, and I want to thank both of you, our wonderful students. I've gotten to know both of you through the years, and this is terrific to continue to be in conversation with both of you. And I have to say a special shout out and congratulations to Brandy as you graduate on Saturday. So looking forward to it. Well done, my friend. You know, look, absolutely, as someone who's lived these issues and has been thinking about these issues for a really long time, and I've spent my entire professional career navigating predominantly white institutions, and that includes several in higher education. So I understand many of the dimensions of the question. I think that look, everyone wants to be treated as an individual, wants to be thought of as an individual, has different backgrounds, experiences, and a wholeness to themselves rather than just one marker. And I think it's important that we constantly remember that. At the same time, as an institution, right, it's hard to hold all of that complexity in an institutional way. And so, that's part of the reason why data becomes something that can be attractive. And look, like so many things in life, it's a both and. Right? It's not that data is bad and stories are good, or vice versa. It's really, you need it all to understand the complexity and to really begin to fully address problems and issues. Look, data has its advantages. It allows you to measure progress. It allows you to see trends. It's objective. It's comparable across institutions, but it's not sufficient. Right? And I think that becomes the problem when people become so data or metric focused that it becomes you're chasing the numbers as opposed to really thinking about the underlying problems or issues that you're trying to address. And I think the stories do a great example of getting to what Dean Nowicki says, issues of belonging, issues of connection, issues of ways in which we can see that the work that presumably the bean counting, so to speak, is happening for a reason, and we can begin to address that. So what we try to do here is think about the multitude of voices, of course with students, of course through a holistic admissions process. Like any other schools, we report the data as we are obligated to do, but we try not to leave it just to the data. I think that same is true even on what we're doing in courses, and to make sure that we have a variety of courses and approaches and different voices and perspectives, even within race, for example. It's just a category, since that's what we're talking about now, there, so that people can have, can enter from different perspectives, can analyze from different approaches, and have different experiences reflected there. I think there have been a lot of advances, a lot of work that we've done in this area that I'm really proud of, but it's not about number counting. It's about listening to the voices of the community, the varied voices of the community. And that's how I think we've ended up with some of the exciting new initiatives that we've been developing.
Right on time. Dean Nichols, please.
Well, hi to everyone there, and thank you again. Let me echo my thanks, especially to Brandy and Samia and the others that put it together, and to the other deans. Yes, congratulations on graduating, but being a rising 3L is incredible. It's a feat in itself. So this is great. I'm happy to be joining you, and this is a great first question to start with. If I can jump off of one thing that Dean Jenkins mentioned, especially. This is a spot that is a both and spot. And I think it's helpful to go ahead and name that, because each one of us comes in as an individual, and in whatever way you try to characterize me, whatever way I try to characterize you, I'm going to get some things wrong, right? And if I'm not really careful, and when I do that, I lump you or you lump me with different groups, we've all experiences where we've been offended by that, and rightly so, right? And at the same time, I need to be really cautious and say, as your piece says, and we can put it on the table, I lack experiences that people of color have, right? There are things that are unique to people of certain groups that are outside my experience, right? And so there are times that the generalizations are really helpful, because if I ignore those as well at the wrong times, then I'm going to step into landmines and be offensive, and the same thing will happen the other direction. So I really do think we need to pay attention on both directions, but coming at this from the individual side is really a great starting point. And as we're thinking about this institutionally, and where I'd want to come personally as well, is that where I want to start with each person I interact, student, faculty, staff, is, are they having a really robust sense of welcome by being around me and by being in the place where I am and at our school, right? So we think about this right in terms of inclusion, in terms of belonging. I like to talk about it in terms of hospitality, that if you step into this space, it'll be a space where you become known and you can trust other people to know you and to include you. And so, yes, that's there, that's present from the admissions process and other places, but even in the first week of school, when we're coming in, we've kind of got a short course in the before all the doctrinal classes start. And in that class, one of our key focuses part of the time is having students talk to each other in small groups in the classroom setting, but telling stories of where they come from, because they're not going to understand that this person has this different life experience and this one has this different experience, and getting them talking about that in that setting is a start to helping people feel welcome, right? And we want to accompany that with the very intentional task of creating relationships across the differences that we have. So we're naming that from the beginning of time the students walk in the school. We want to be intentional to say that who each person is matters in their own right, and they don't have to give that up in some sense. They can be fully who they are, but we want to connect with each other across that. So I'll end at that. I've got a story I can add in later, but I'm going to run over time if I tell my story. So I'll stop and bring it back later when Brandy tells me I've got time.
Thank you for that. And I'm sure, yeah, Brandy's stricter with time. A reminder to our audience to submit questions in the chat if you would like. But we'll go on to our second question. With that understanding and the idea that stories and the individual is as important, in my opinion, more important than the community, let's discuss specific actions and initiatives towards achieving a holistic diversity within the League of Community of Minnesota. Our article outlined 6 recommendations. Most of our recommendations focused on how law schools as a whole could improve the student experience, whether that was greater diversity among faculty, increased course offerings on race and law, or clinics or community work that really reflected their interest and their identities. Since we've published, all 3 schools are prioritizing such investments to improve the student experience, as some of you have already mentioned in your wonderful answers to your first question. So to expand on that, how can the legal community who are watching, whether it is, your HR directors or partners or supporters of nonprofits, how can the legal community as a whole help with these projects and expand your impact beyond the law school? And to give this even more context, I love being at my law school. It's amazing. I have been nurtured, I have been heard, and I have been motivated to not only write this article, but to always question. And a lot of my work outside of the law school has actually come out of this, that encouragement, that work I do in law school. So this is not just for the legal community as a whole, but how can law students and also interact with this or help in this way? And this is also to the audience, so to help you facilitating your questions as well. So to repeat the question, how can the legal community help with these projects and expand your impact beyond the law school? Dean Nichols, I'll start with you.
Great, thanks. I got to end last time and start, so I'll pick it up with a couple of pieces. I'm certain to work on a story here at the beginning. But so one thing to think about is just to name that that the Bar Association and different groups are already connecting, and that is helpful. And we need to continue that and continue finding ways for the legal community and the business community to be connected to the law schools, to the students that we have, to our graduates, both to facilitate entrance into the profession, but also to look back at the schools and to say, are you really doing all you can, right? To increase diversity in the profession, to increase awareness of structural issues facing people of color, a number of things across the board, right? So one of the concrete ways that we're already seeing help, and we certainly can keep having help, is for attorneys to partner with us and mentor students. So we've got a robust mentor externship program where every law student is partnered with an attorney for each of their years in school. And so we have a lot of people connected that way. But this could be through informal ways as well. But in that process, one thing I'm mindful of is that this is not simply an ask for attorneys of color to be mentoring students of color, because there aren't enough attorneys of color out there, and it's an over ask of them. So this is a responsibility of all of us. And so, a couple of weeks ago, we had the Black law students had a night of distinction gala where they focused on entrepreneurship and other things. And some of our alums were telling their stories. One of them in particular told a story about a mentor that he had. And I don't know if that mentor was an attorney of color or not, right? The story runs the same either way. But this now successful alum was telling the story about during his first year, for a number of reasons, his first year grades were really not matching his aspirations or his abilities. And there were some really good reasons for that. But he'd been paired with this attorney. He was looking for a summer job. And the mentor said, "What are you going to do? Where do you want to go?" And they had a conversation about it. And the student was really transparent about the fact his grades weren't matching up. And the mentor that day basically put his own reputation on the line for the student, reached out and made a phone call, and it turned into an interview for the student. And then the student then, once the door was open, went through, was very successful on its own. But the mentor was able to say to the student, "I know you, I know who you are, right? And those grades don't match up who you're going to be as an attorney." And so the mentor reached out kind of on his behalf and helped set him up for success. And then now that alum has turned around and is doing the same thing. So this is a kind of a key way that people can be involved. One other thing I'll mention just with a brief amount of time is we often do think about the importance of pipeline programs. And so we can talk more about that if there's time. I would just want to emphasize one side note about that is we've got a couple of really good pipeline program initiatives. I know that the other schools do as well, but there's a challenge for law schools in investing in pipeline programs because those are students who may not come to our school eventually, right? So it's dissipating. It's really good overall, but from a school's perspective, kind of investing in a single pipeline, unless it's tied to only one school, is dissipating the school's assets. And we wouldn't want to only invest in one school in many ways, right? But that's another great place for the profession to partner with us, to partner with the other schools, is to get out and do that. My time is even upside down, and so it's definitely time for me to stop.
Thank you. And before I go to the next word, I would like to echo that. Most of my mentors are not people of color. They're actually white men. I have no idea why that worked out, but I value relationships, and I fully echo the idea that mentorship and what the law community as a whole, the advice you can offer to law students can truly be monumental. So with that and my little 2 cents, I'll pass on to Dean Jenkins.
Great, thank you. And I will just echo that myself, thinking about my own experiences at the law firm where I spent most of my career before I went in-house and then ultimately became a professor. The 3 most important mentors that I had were, if we're just talking again, race, demographics, race and gender, but, a white male, a white woman, a Black man, right? As a variety, right? So it takes, to develop as a young lawyer, actually it takes a lot of relationships, it takes a lot of nurturing. So it's not even just one mentor. Often it's many, it's multiple that leads to folks becoming great lawyers. And so many people have that capacity if people invest time in that. And I'm still grateful to Michael, Victoria, and John, who I remember well and appreciate them. But to get back to the initial question, one thing I'm going to say, we can certainly talk about outside beyond the law school, but it starts at the law school, right? It starts with bringing great students here, bringing great faculty here, and to do that, you've got to have think about what do students ask? They ask about what's going to happen when we're here. What are the programs? What are the activities? What's my life going to be like? And then what can they do afterwards? Those are the 2 key drivers, questions in most students' mind when they're deciding even whether or not to go to law school, right? Whether to go to law school or keep working or go to business school or get a PhD or something. That's the world in which we're competing with. And we can't do any of those other things without that, right? And so we've got to make sure that we're aligned along the way to do that. And I'll be honest, that takes resources. It takes resources for us to attract the kinds of folks that we want to be here, to deliver the kinds of programs, and to have the impact on the community. So it certainly starts with what's in the law school, and we need resources in a limited environment to do that. We are all in, whether we're public schools, private schools, part of a big university, standalones, resources are, the biggest challenge for us. And we want to do the new things, the new ideas that are, many of which were put forward by the students, and some of which we are moving forward on. We're a new assistant dean for diversity. We're recruiting right now for that position. Our new racial justice clinic, lots of things, but they cost. They cost money. They are resources. And there was a time when law schools kind of, I'm going to say, before 2006, when the deans got to say yes to everything, because it was tuition driven, and to be honest, there wasn't much financial aid given out. So there were resources to do that, and that's just not the case anymore. So we need partners so that we can do that. There's so much talent here, but we can do so much more. So that's where I am.
And Dean Nedwicki, I'll have you close us off.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that Dean Jenkins went to where all deans go, and that's seeking out resources, because that's the reality. There's so many things we want to do and so many things we need to do as leaders in the community. I mean, each one of the law schools here has to play a role in addressing some of the issues that we are dealing with within the communities. And we can do that by empowering our students and working with our students to do well and do those things, but those do take resources. And so there will be times when we'll reach out and ask for help in doing those types of resources. I think personnel and people are really kind of the real important things. There's 2 points I really want to make out of this. And I echo everything that the other two deans have said already too. But one is, I started my whole beginning with this whole sense of belonging, and it's important. I think all studies, show that people are going to learn much better in law school if they see people like them being successful and showing what a path looks like to that success. And so, if there are people within the community, a diverse perspective, I know we highlighted the fact that, it doesn't need to be particular race or so forth, but it's important for us to highlight and celebrate those individuals who have been successful in order for our students to see what success looks like and what that path looks like. So I think that that's really important in drawing those connections and helping that pipeline work there. The other thing is, I really think it's important for the bar to help educate themselves about these issues. I think we're in an environment in this world right now where we're all in our camps and we don't want to listen to the other side. This is my experience, your experience is invalid. We all started with stories in this. I just encourage everybody who's a member of the bar, meet with somebody who's different, spend some time with them, listen to their stories, understand maybe how the law may be affecting their lives differently than it might be affecting your own life. And so I think it's important for all of us to do what we can to educate ourselves. And that doesn't stop the day that you get your diploma. I think it has to continue on to be really effective lawyers. One of the things that we've tried to work on here is to look for pipelines in order to kind of help our students go from early in their careers or early in college all the way through to the time that they actually get a job. And so we're looking at different types of pipelines and really trying to expose people that wouldn't otherwise think about the law, that law is reachable for them. And so one of those areas for us is, we know that the IP world is extraordinarily lacks diversity, both gender and race diversity. The numbers show it. And so one of the things we've been trying to do is working with the National IP Institute and their foundation to go to STEM students and really talk about what law is like and what's possible. And then have people that have taken that path be mentors, both before, during, and after law school. So that mentorship has to begin before they even walk into the door, because we all know there's this hidden curriculum. There's things that people don't know. If you're first generation, you don't have anybody telling you. And so it's helpful to connect with people that can tell you, you need to do this to study for your LSAT exam. You need to put this in your application. Set aside this amount of money when you're in law school to help you pay for the bar and those types of things. So you need people that are going to mentor you, to give you and help you with that hidden curriculum that occurs before, during, and after law school within the law firm.
Thank you to all three of you. Brandy?
Yes, thank you. We just got a question in. I haven't had a chance. Oops, there goes the timer. You're perfect on time. I haven't had a chance to read through it. So I'm going to give you a quick pivot question, and let's say 2 minutes each on this, and then I'll read through the question that came in, and we'll maybe do 2 minutes on that. So first question, is really just about maybe some of the barrier or one of the barriers. We're not sure. We kind of want to get your thought on that. So, I have seen, unfortunately, that diversity, equity, and inclusion has triggered some public controversy, especially in the K-12 environment. So if you've been reading the newspaper, you'll notice that when these critical race theory or race conscious instruction, increasing diversity, when these conversations get brought up in that environment, there are often parents and other people showing up at school board meetings and across Minnesota and really uncomfortable with these changes. And it seems like some of that might be driven by a lack of understanding on what the schools are attempting to do. So my question, kind of my pivot question that I'll give you 2 minutes each on, is have you experienced similar pushback in your work around race, equity, and inclusion at that law school level? And if so, how are you overcoming it? Are there ways that us in the legal community can help support you if you do face these barriers? And so with that, I will turn it over to Dean Jenkins. Samia, do you mind taking over timekeeping while I look through this question?
Simi is getting on her phone. While she does that, I'll just get started.
Thank you.
So I haven't had the direct what I would say attack on teaching CRT, if that's part of the question, Brandy. Maybe look, we all know that critical race theory comes out of law. That's where the tradition is, and it's been part of our discipline for more than 40 years now. So perhaps that's part of it. But I think, and I would argue the current backlash isn't about critical race theory. It has nothing really to do, it's just a catchy buzzword that I think may sound sinister to those who aren't fully aware. But I think what it is a backlash is about having honest discussions about race and inequality and our history. And I think that's what's happening in K-12 schools. I don't think K-12 schools are starting to become law schools. I mean, in some ways that'd be great. We start more legal education and recruiting them, but that's not what's happening. So I think part of it is really understanding what's going on. And so, I will say that, we've done a variety of things, including, for example, our George Floyd Memorial Scholarship in law. And, and there are hundreds of people who have been wonderfully supportive and have contributed to it because they've been personally moved. But there are others who aren't as happy about the choice that others have made to create that scholarship. So.
Thank you, Dean Jenkins, and thank you, Samia, for stepping in, pinch hitting on my timekeeping duties. Dean Nedwicki, would you like to go next, just for 2 quick minutes?
Yeah, sure. I agree with everything that Dean Jenkins said. I think overwhelmingly, there's much more support for some of the initiatives that we're doing at our school to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. But there has been some pushback. There's just no question about it. And it's always very interesting to me when I look back, it usually comes in the form of an alum or something said, what are you doing to my school? You're turning it into, this type of school or whatever. It's always important just to kind of point out to them, well, the school has always been this way. The school has always been looking for ways to provide access to a legal education. And so what I've learned that I've had to do with some of the few people that have spoken to me or sent me emails where they're not as happy with some of the initiatives we're doing is just to talk with them, because I think that there's always this level of fear that's unfounded. And so when you talk to them and explain what you're trying to do and fit it within the time period that they might have been in school, they listen and they get it. They may not totally agree with us, but they do understand why you're doing it and why the school would be going in that particular direction. And so I just always encourage us just to have conversations, even if they're difficult, because we should be trying to do this as much and model this for our students and our colleagues in the community at large in a better way than what is happening around us.
Great. And then Dean Nichols, if you have anything to add, and after that, we'll move on to some of the audience questions.
Sure. Well, this is maybe we jump back to where we started, right? One of the answers to this question is that I think we all need to be sensitive to the fact as well that each person that approaches us or approaches a situation or listens is coming from their own particularity. And so when people hear that, to the extent we want to advance things on diversity, equity, inclusion, I found it's really important that we have to meet people where they are, right? And so to the extent that there's pushback, it generally comes from people's perception that where they are is not respected or threatened, or that we institutionally are insisting that there only is one single monolithic voice on things. So if we just take one minor example, right? It's not to blow anything up, right? But you can imagine an academic institution, one of our core values is academic freedom. And if we want to be a place that says we value relationship across difference, and we do, I mean that across all kinds of difference, then I want to actually respect the other voices of faculty members, of students, of wherever they're coming from, and not insist that they land at a particular spot, but to make sure that all those people are welcome in the conversations being facilitated, even while we're saying, look, there are things to really talk about here, and there are really situations we need to pay attention to. But striking that balance kind of seems to be one of the really important things that we've got to pay attention to.
Thank you, Dean Nichols. So I'm going to stick with you for one more second. A question came in that's picking up on a comment that you specifically made. So I'll go back to you, and then if anyone else wants to weigh in, you may. And then our last question is a meaty one, and so I'll give you all a chance to weigh in on that one. So for this one, Dean Nichols, earlier in the discussion, you commented about recognizing that your life experience differs from the experience of diverse students and lawyers. And so the question, I keep forgetting to do that, my apologies. The question is what can this person who identifies as white, they identify as a straight white guy who grew up in a non-diverse community, what can they do? What recommendations do you have for them to help them recognize their blind spots and to start seeing things that just may not be apparent to them because of their upbringing? So I'll start with you.
I think it's a great question. And I really appreciate asking the question the way that, how do I recognize my blind spots, right? Because the truth is, I have them, you have them, we all have them, right? And naming that we've got things we can't see about ourselves and about our experience is one of the core ways that I think we can let our guard down a little bit and be open and receptive to others. So I think that's an initial key, followed closely on the heels by saying, how do I really authentically try to find a way to listen? Sometimes we talk too much. I've got things about my experience that you don't know about me that I could share, that would inform you, that would be like, oh, that actually is just like me. But if I walk into a space thinking that I'm going to start off by talking instead of walking in listening, I'm typically doing people doing a disservice. So I want to authentically listen and engage in a way that it's actually responsive. And then as part of that listening, there's not a single answer to this, right? But at least for me, there's also some acknowledgement of the spaces where I have come from, the things that I know and I don't know, and then trying to put myself in situations and in contact with people whose experiences are different from me, and reading things that are outside my experience and making sure that I've got that on my agenda so that I can circle back to where we started, so I can continue to pay attention to my blind spots. And then the one thing I'd ask of those around me is, for each of us to give each other a little grace when we make a mistake. Because if people are authentically trying, which is really what we want in this space, then it seems to me we've got to try to lower the temperature a little bit and say, I might make a misstep, and I need you to call me on my misstep and let me know there's a better way to do it, but also extend me enough grace to know that I'm actually trying to make progress here.
Thank you, Dean Nichols. I'll pause for a second in case any of the other deans want to jump in for a minute or so on this one.
I just want to echo the grace part. I think for some reason in our society, we don't give anybody any grace anymore. We're going to make mistakes. That's how we learn. And so I think I just want to double up on that one for sure.
Absolutely. I co-sign that as well. There was a great training that I went to once where the analogy was it's almost like when you step on someone's toe, you say, "Oh, I'm sorry," right? You acknowledge it, you say, "I'm sorry," but then you move on. And that's what we have to get into that kind of environment, as long as we're actively, not intentionally, walking around stomping on people's toes, right? So.
Thank you. Fantastic answers all around. Okay, so now I'm going to answer this next question in the way that I've interpreted it. If you are the anonymous attendee and I've misstepped, please clarify in the chat, but I think it's a really good one. So as I read it, I think what this person is getting at is that there are these kind of institutional or environmental barriers to academic success that they see for students who are from socioeconomically depressed backgrounds, students of color, such that the traditional models of success don't really work well to highlight the success of these students. Whether that's the grading policies, the bar exam, I think you can kind of take it in a lot of different ways. And so their question is, in what ways, and they target the ABA, but also law schools acknowledge this challenge, and what can you do about it to like help? Because I think for them, and I think it's a valid point, this is a barrier to wider diversity among student body. So that's the first question. And then there's a follow-up, but let's start there and see where we are on time. So I'll invite Dean Nowicki. I'll invite you to go first.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think it's part of what we started this whole conversation with, and that's really how do we look at our students more holistically? Because we need to have, our goal should be take our students where they are when they walk in the door and find out where they need to go and how we can help them and support them on that path to wherever that might be. And we also recognize that there are systemic barriers within legal education, within the legal profession, call them out and work on changing those particular things. I think the bar exam is a perfect example of that, is that was historically developed as a tool to exclude people in the early 1910, 1920s, specifically Black people and new immigrants. And it's had that same type of power throughout its existence. So let's challenge those systems and let's try to figure out how we can break those down and make them more equitable while still serving the purpose that they're meant to serve. I think the other one is financial barriers is a huge issue. And the way that law schools are financed, they're always supporting those that already have the money or the resources. So I'll give you an example. You got a student who comes from a wealthy family, wants to go to law school. They went to a really good undergraduate because their parents paid for it. And then they take the LSAT exam. But what they do is they take a tutor or go through a process in order to increase their LSAT exam score. And so that's who usually gets the most scholarship money, because schools are driven by US News and the rankings, which puts a heavy emphasis on the LSAT score. And so that causes those that already have the opportunity to get more. And then you've got these students who might be coming from a two-year college that then went to a state institution, no financial resources. They do the best that they can to take the LSAT exam, but don't have the resources in order to maybe increase that. They may have lower LSAT scores, doesn't show anything about their ability, but then they're getting the lower scholarships. So they have the extra burden of either having to work or do other things in order to survive and do well in law school. And it just adds another barrier that's there in the system. And that could be really heavy for first generation and people that just don't have the same financial support.
Thank you. Dean Jenkins, I'll turn it over to you next.
Yeah, I agree. This is a complicated issue. To be honest, I think that we need to also be honest with ourselves about broader educational inequality that starts a lot earlier than law school, and how a lot of what we're seeing really is directly connected to that. So. I think that if we're really going to have honest conversations, that's got to be part of the conversation. It's not the whole conversation, but it's part of the conversation. And of course, these things are complicated. And I mean, even I agree 100% with everything Anthony said. At the same time, there are also students who, do well on the LSAT. They went to maybe not the most well-known school, and it's the LSAT that's providing them the opportunity to go to a more to a law school of their choice, and to have the scholarship funding too. That's part of the story as well. So there's a lot of complication there. I think one thing that one barrier that I think we as a profession need to think about is that we tend to reward the quick and the fast. So what I mean by that is I often use the popcorn analogy. When we're creating lawyers, it's almost like we're creating popcorn. And by that, I mean, those who get it fast, i.e., let's say in their first semester or their first year, are not necessarily better than those who get it later. They just got it earlier. They just caught on earlier. And it's the same way when you're popping popcorn in a microwave. Those kernels that pop in the first second, you know what? They taste just as good as the kernels that pop at the last second, right? It's popcorn. Like once you get it, you get it. And it's the same way with lawyers. We can create great lawyers, and there are some who get it right away. And so maybe after the first year, they'll be in the top of the class, but that doesn't mean that someone who maybe takes 4 semesters to kind of get it, that they can be a great lawyer too. And we need to make sure that the profession recognizes that and sees that there's excellence throughout the class, not just those who pop early, if you follow my analogy.
Thank you, Dean Jenkins. I loved that analogy. Dean Nichols, I'll turn it over to you for the last word. I have one very quick last question after that, and we'll wrap up on time. Thank you.
Great. I'll be brief here. I like Dean Jenkins' analogy as well. I haven't named it quite that way in the past, but I have in many years talking to first-year law students said kind of the same thing, right? That there's some curve to this, and what matters is the progress people are making, and at the end of the day, the kind of attorneys they're going to be, and we can produce, all of these schools can produce some really excellent attorneys. Turning to the question a little bit, a brief answer is, to the extent that we're talking about socioeconomic disadvantages, it is there's no easy answer to this, right? But it is something that's at least on the radar of groups like the Law School Admissions Council, as well as the individual schools. So over the last cycle, for applicants for law schools, the highest percentage of fee waivers from the Law School Admissions Council was for Black or African-American applicants, right? So there are still other barriers. I don't want to deny that at all, but there are some that are tied and targeted, and different institutions with different reports or application fees can also hit at that. We at St. Thomas are also partnering with Access Lex, which is a group that's got what they're calling Lex Scholars Post-Baccalaureate Program, which is another pipeline program. We've got some diverse students engaged in that. We've got an alumni connections committee. So there are ways to try to get back at this, but it echoes things we've mentioned earlier, that there's not one single solution. So we've got to look across the board. I guess with the last half of a minute left, one thing I would emphasize is that I want, even especially as an attorney and my way of training, I want to go straight towards solutions, and we've got to be a little bit careful because Pope Francis, we're a Catholic school, so I looked at Pope Francis, but Martin Luther King says this as well, that in responding to racism, we're called to faithfulness and not just to success. And so it's not just metrics at the end of the day. And I don't at all mean this as a cop-out, the data matters, right? But that where we also need to be returning to over and over is, are we living and working and aligning ourselves in ways that that respect the dignity and the humanity of every person, and do the best that we can to set us up for success now, but setting us up for success over the years to come? And are we being faithful to that?
Thank you, Dean Nichols. Thank you, Dean Jenkins. Thank you, Dean Nitwicki. I have just really enjoyed speaking to you this afternoon. We were not able, every time, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna get it right. We were not able to get to everyone's questions, sadly. There is one question that I think it's worthwhile. You can give me just a yes or a no. I'm hoping it'll be across the board yeses. But I think, so we got a comment that this has been an amazing conversation, and I would agree. And people want it to continue. So there was a question of whether the deans would be willing to do this again, perhaps in a year. So very quickly, you could let us know, and we could invite you back in a year for another conversation.
Of course.
Wholeheartedly, yes.
Yes, I'd be happy to join you again. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks. Maybe we'll bring in a new class of students to lead it, as Simi and I might be on to bigger and better things. But again, thank you so much. Erica, is there any last housekeeping items that you want to share before we all sign off?
No, just a quick reminder in terms of CLE credit that you will be sent the event code within the next couple weeks. So you will not receive an event code today. But I appreciate on behalf of the HCBA and really Tri-Bar and to stress the importance of continuing to put focus and power and voice and really, I think, emphasizing giving voice to our law students and recognizing that they're the leaders of the profession, and thinking forward of not how we just get them, into law schools, but how do we retain them, and thinking about you all here listening in your organizations. What are you doing to make sure that while we build them up for success to get through law school, what are you doing them to support them throughout the longevity of their career, which is, just as important. And so thinking about that, look forward to continuing to partner with all of you in the law schools, with the bar associations, and building that partnership. And thank you for being here and sharing your truths today.
Thank you all for having us. It's been a pleasure hosting. Hopefully Brandy's also coming back next year to do this if we do. Once again, thank you all so much for having this, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.